Welcome to the Action Network podcast for our final NFL recap episode of the season. I am your host, Evan Abrams, and I am joined, as always, by the one. Now, this guy, he did well tonight. He picked some winners for you. I'm joined by Brandon Anderson, of course, in the early hours of Monday morning to break down what we saw from Super Bowl 59. This one, first of all, Brandon, before we get into this game, which honestly wasn't even really a game. I guess you start punt, and you say to yourself, okay, well, not sure I predicted this one. Some people liked points, some people didn't. But at that point, you said to yourself, okay, well, anything can happen. And then it kind of broke open. What's up, man?
Yeah, wow. It really on. It's like, okay, I guess we're doing this slow thing. We kind of thought this. I thought it might trend toward under. Certainly did not. I'm happy to not bet the total here, but it looked under early. It looked like, okay, we're gonna get some of these kind of long bleed the clock sort of drives. Weird reffing early. We had like the long fourth down conversion for the Eagles that came off for an offensive pass interference. I don't think it was offensive pass interference, but you can't put your hand on the other dude's face mask. Like, that's a penalty every time. It's right in the ref's line of sight. Then we had sort of a makeup call, I thought, the other way. Then thankfully the refs, really not a story after that, I thought. I don't know that it necessarily felt like they were part of it. The obviously key turning point is it's 10-0. And I don't have proof of this because I don't have a bet for it. I wish I had tweeted or something. It felt like, so the Chiefs are getting the ball back. They hold them to a field goal. It's 10-0. It felt like a big play was coming. And I said to my girlfriend, okay, either the Chiefs are about to get a huge touchdown here, or the Chiefs are about to get a huge touchdown here for the other team. And I think it was, the Chiefs, I don't think it even had a first down on their very first play and then just like nothing for nearly the entire rest of the half after that. Maybe the whole half. I think they did have only one first down. But Mahomes, not good at all in this game. Overthrows, trying to make something happen. Just didn't see Cooper DeJean at all. DeJean picks it off, takes it to the house. I like catch my breath because I had the defensive touchdown, and I'm like, don't step out of like the 3. It was so close. But he takes it in, and 17-0. It's like, okay, well, it's Mahomes. Like 17-0. Bettors are primed to be like, all right, are we getting a plus number on Mahomes now? Like, can we bet the money line now? It's like, yeah, the money line was like 13 and 14 to 1 by early in the second half. So you were getting plenty of plus money on it. But yeah, that play was not the end. But in hindsight, it might have been 17-0. The way that this Eagles defense was playing, that was certainly the point. Whereas before that, I was like, okay, it's fine. Mahomes always trails at halftime of the Super Bowl. We know how this goes. It's all fine. I think that Cooper DeJean interception was the moment when everyone was like, oh, okay, I feel like this is happening right now.
I think you're probably right. At that point in the game, you had said to yourself, well, KC has almost no yards. And obviously they have no yards almost going into halftime, 23 net yards versus 24 points for the Eagles. But at that point in the game, it's 17-0. And you say, well, we haven't really seen anything yet.
Yeah.
But I think backing up a little bit, because listen, people bet on so many different things. I just want to talk about the national anthem, even at the start of the game, basically completely even on the total. So we kind of started off there with a little bit of controversy. I saw a lot of overs, saw a lot of unders, a lot of conversation. So that was really just, fun when something like that happens.
Well, and John Batiste goes 3 times on the penultimate line of the song. I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, we're going way under. And all of a sudden 3 times, and then just really belts out the Brave. And yeah, it got like right to the line.
And then some of those, some of the books have after first Brave, everyone kind of went crazy there. But the thing I thought was kind of nuts is, so Chiefs punt first 2 possessions, punt. And I looked it up and I said, okay, let's start looking up some punt stats, like bad Super Bowl starts. Even last year was San Francisco, obviously KC down at the half, but they started punt as well. So, first 3 possessions, KC punts. And that's only the 3rd team to do that in the last 2 decades, punting their first 3 possessions. At this point, you're like, well, when are they ever going to get started? I think the other big moment, the Dotson almost first touchdown. I saw some 80 to 1 tickets out there. So obviously a huge, that sucks. Let me just say that sucks. And then obviously Hurts scores, who is, minus 120 for his touchdown. That's a
Right.
joke. That was any time. But basically, it's like 500 or so. Not the best bet, or the longest
Yeah.
odds, I would say. But you're right. So the pick six, 17-0. The stats, that's great there. I believe DeJean's first career interception on his birthday.
On his birthday, yeah.
On his birthday, and saw NFL tweeted out, first player in NFL history with a pick six on his birthday. I mean, literally the absolute perfect story for everything involved. I think the other turning point in the game, like at certain times, you say, okay, can KC get back in? The personal foul that I believe was on like 2nd and 26, which was going to be 3rd and 26, which just terrible. And then the Hopkins drop. I mean, there was just so many opportunities where KC, I mean, I'm not going to say they would have won the game, but get within 2 possessions. Get within 3 possessions. Like, try to put at least a little bit of pressure on Philadelphia at any point, and that's just not what we saw here. And then, I mean, you go to halftime. You have any thoughts on Kendrick Lamar? I mean, I barely saw it. I was kind of traveling, but.
Well, let me give you some stats from halftime. Yeah, the 2nd and 26, I did think that was a pretty weak call. Like you kind of hit Barkley afterward, but like, come on, we don't need that call. That certainly didn't really do much to determine the game. Like there were no determining points in this game. This was just an Eagles landslide. But yeah, that one was disappointing. Hopkins, I don't know how much speed he still has left in the legs, but if he catches that, there's a lot of space over there. So yeah, just rough drop for him. Rough showing for Chiefs not named Xavier Worthy basically in this game on offense. Just nothing. Travis Kelce, nothing till late in the game. Marquise Brown, nothing. Juju hits his over like right away. 2 catches right off the bat. I know a bunch of people had that one and then just kind of disappeared after that. Chiefs run game. Chiefs running backs had for the entire game 7 carries for 24 yards. I did not get a chance to check, but I'm pretty sure 0% success rate. I don't remember any successful Chiefs run. Mahomes, I thought Mahomes was going to run a lot this game. He didn't have a rush in the first half. He couldn't possibly rush. He didn't have time. Like, I thought that he'd get under some pressure and have to take off. He was under so much pressure that he didn't have time to take off, and frankly, did not respond well to the pressure of this game. So halftime stats is 24-0. Just before the half, we know like in the Notre Dame run this year, they talked about the middle 8, right? The middle 8 minutes, the 4 before the half, the 4 after. Brady kind of called it out. Brady basically said, okay, the Eagles have the ball right now before the half. They want to grind the clock down, not give the Chiefs the ball back, because at this point it's 17-0. And if the Chiefs could just make a stop, one stop, and frankly, the Chiefs defense, I thought was pretty much good enough in this game. They just were in an impossible situation all game. They could have been better at times. They could have made a couple pass stops, but for the most part, I think that defensive performance was mostly enough. Certainly the first half, they did enough. They only gave up 10-0 the first half. KC gets the ball back deep in the end zone. Mahomes forces another one. Great play by Zach Bond. Dude who's not even supposed to be a linebacker, who got like signed off the street for basically nothing. Diving interception. Eagles get the ball and get another touchdown for the half. 24-0. Now it's over. So at the half, Eagles have a 47% pressure rate. So that basically means on half of the times they drop back to pass, he's getting pressured. The Chiefs had 23 yards in the first half, fewest since 1990 in a Super Bowl. They had the 1 first down on the very first play. They had 20 plays for 23 yards. So 1.2 yards a play, 20 minutes to 10 minutes time of possession, 0 of 6 on 3rd down. Just nothing, absolutely nothing defensively. Shield Kapadia tweeted out, best defensive first half performance, both by EPA and success rate, by any defense the entire season in the first half against Mahomes. Just absolute masterclass by Eagles defense. I in my preview, both on the podcast and in my article, I gave very little attention to that side of the ball and focused so much on what will happen. The Chiefs surely will score. It's Mahomes. Let's see the other side, though. What happens if Jalen Hurts is behind? Well, it didn't matter, it turned out. They just kept handing the ball off, and frankly, couldn't do anything handing the ball off. Saquon Barkley did nothing in this game. 25 carries for like 56 yards or something. They completely shut down Saquon Barkley, and it did not matter because, like they have since the beginning of October, they played with the lead safely the entire way through. And turns out it doesn't matter what happens if you don't have to play with a negative script ever, because they just never did it.
Yeah, the three, I guess, bullet points I would say is Barkley, 25 carries, 2.3 per. It is just unbelievable job, at least on that side of the field. To say
Yeah.
you did that and then lost this game by, the final score is just so not indicative of the game we watched. And then the
Yeah.
other note I'll say here, I think KC started 0 of 7. It might have even been 0 of 8 on third down, which
Yeah.
the battle walking in here, I believe it was third best third down on one side versus third best third down on the other side in terms of defense and offense with Mahomes' offense versus their defense. I mean, that was the story of the game. I can't wait to rewatch this one. I know last week I rewatched Super Bowl 57 a few times. When I rewatch Super Bowl 59, I'm going to really want to watch. I'm going to rewatch those third downs because I
Yeah.
really want to see. I'm pretty sure there were a lot of third and eights, third and tens. I mean, they really weren't completing many passes. And, you talked about the running backs. Maybe the easiest bet of the entire game. Raybon was on it. I talked about it. Kansas City under 113 and a half, 115 and a half, 117 and a half rushing yards. I mean, they finished with 49 and was literally never in question. It actually might have been easier than Philly money line because at no point in that game did you
Yeah.
really think that was going over.
Well,
And
half of
then,
that was Mahomes too, and he barely did
yes,
anything until late.
I mean, the second bullet point, just KC's third downs. I mean, I think they started 0 of 7, maybe 0 of 8 in that situation. So when I rewatch this game, and I watched Super Bowl 57 a few times last week, when I see Super Bowl 59, I'm going to want to rewatch those third downs because to me, it's, it was third and eights, third and tens, and they just weren't completing many passes. And then you look at the rushing game, that was even crazier. Maybe that was the easiest bet of the game. Under 113 and a half, 115 and a half, 117 and a half. Raybon was on it too, but 49 yards. And you talked about it too. Mahomes had 25 rushing yards, so pretty crazy.
Yeah, just nothing at all rushing for them. The Chiefs offense, really nothing. Just couldn't get anything going all game. Even the fact that they scored 22, it did not feel like that. It legitimately felt like they might get shut out for a large portion of this game. And even to the point where I was like, man, I know Hurts got the third touchdown. We're jumped ahead to after halftime, but I was still hoping for my defensive MVP. I was like, if you shut out the Chiefs, you got to give MVP to some defender, don't you? Like, if you actually pull off the shutout, I don't know, Josh Sweat maybe 2.5 sacks. Milton Williams had 2 sacks and a fumble recovery late. Zach Bond had the interception. Great play by him. Cooper DeJean has the pick 6. That's the problem. It really wasn't an MVP. The MVP was the defense. It's the whole thing. And really, that's the master class by the defense. Trying to see what other notes I had. So Mahomes had, I think, I don't have the final number, but I think about 50% pressure rate all game. Do you know that the Philadelphia Eagles blitzed 0 times? They did not blitz Mahomes once the entire game, and he was under pressure every second of every play for the entire game. It was unreal. And I think, too, masterclass for the defense, masterclass for Howie Roseman. This defense is completely different than the defense that showed up in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They turned over a lot. They brand new rookie corners. They bring in Zach Bond. They went and got some pass rushers. They got the 2 Georgia defensive tackles the last couple of years. Jalen Carter's a stud now. They completely rebuilt this defense. Went through 2 different defensive coordinators to get to this third one now that's working. And the defense cost them the game the last time. Defense won them the game this time. I'm going to circle back. You threw it to me a few minutes ago. I'm going to go back to halftime now. So we're at halftime. Kendrick Lamar is on the show. I don't know a lot of Kendrick Lamar. I love that even though he didn't get to say it, we got an entire Super Bowl audience dissing on a minor. So that was my takeaway from Kendrick Lamar. What do you think of the halftime show?
I mean, the only thing, and honestly, I don't even remember because I got a tip and I had put it out when I was having a conversation. I picked the first song, and I believe Gilles Gallant as well
He did, yeah.
had as well. So a few of us had made some money on the first song by him, which is honestly, I didn't even see the show. I was traveling between one place and the other, and just saw that the first song was what he did, and I was excited about that. I'm a little older. I think a few of us are a little older. I think it was a pretty terrible choice all around. Now, I get it from different people's points of view. I'm completely okay with it. I don't exactly have a good replacement on who it should have been. I think the halftime, I'll just say this, I think the halftime performance at the Super Bowl kind of needs to be rethought. Because it is a really, really long period of time. Coaches have talked about that. But even from an entertainment point of view, when we're going to get new sandwiches and dips and refilling our drinks, like something else can probably fill that period. But maybe I'm just a curmudgeon and, we can keep doing the music acts. So.
I mean,
that's all I can say
the
there.
friends that I texted or talked to that are bigger into the Kendrick Lamar type scene really like the show. So I'm happy they enjoyed the show. While we're on the halftime thoughts, a couple other things. The score bug was a disaster in this game.
Yeah, that's
the new
fair.
Score, like immediately, I like, what are we doing? Like the giant letters, there's no box behind it for the background, so they're just kind of these floating boxes. Like I honestly thought it was so bad, and they were getting so much crap for it online. I wondered if they'd like adjust at the half or something. That was really bad. I thought Tom Brady was not great as a broadcast. Like it didn't really feel like he added much. It was very blah. Patrick Mahomes, by the way, is now 0-2 in Super Bowls involving Tom Brady. So I'm not sure Brady was really the reason either one of those. I had to know about the commercials. My girlfriend was very excited to see Clydesdales. We got the baby Clydesdale right before the halftime. Not a lot of standout commercials. Like I miss the old days with like the Bud Bowl game that you got to like slowly see how it played out. Like the Budweiser frog. I guess just Budweiser commercials was apparently my thing as a kid growing up. I'm not sure what that should say about me. I don't know that there was even there was one weird commercial with like a tongue thing happening that I at least remember, but I don't know what that was for. It doesn't seem like Super Bowl commercials are really a thing anymore to me. Did you have any commercials that stood out to you?
No, see, that's the thing. I think the entertainment aspect is kind of lost. How about Red Panda? Let's do Red Panda at the half or something like that. But I just, to me, there's a missing element of creativity in some of those commercials. And the entertainment act at halftime was, it is what it is. But I will say this: one of the most entertaining betting moments of the game, at least for me, was we got over 2.5 pass attempts in basically the final minute or so of the game with Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett comes into the game, and then Kenny Pickett hands off a bunch of times, and you obviously need him. He threw the ball exactly once, which cashed that bet. I knew Simon was on that. A few of other people bet it.
And not only that, but he hands the ball off 3 times. They go absolutely nowhere. So it's 4th down, I believe, into the 2-minute warning. And it's like, all right, well, they're just going to punt it. I'm getting excited over here. I got my Carson Wentz jersey on. This is the Carson Wentz Super Bowl. Yep. By the way, I think I'm wearing the jersey of both the winning team and the best quarterback on the other team today. That's about how bad Patrick Mahomes played today. But my family's all texting me, is Wentz going to come in? Kenny Pickett's playing. Shouldn't Carson Wentz come in? So, yeah, they come back from the 2-minute warning and decide to just go for it on 4th down because why not? You're ahead by $1 billion anyway. So that's where you get the Pickett throw. And then, of course, I'm excited. Okay, maybe Wentz is going to come in, and instead Mahomes comes in and gets my personal most exciting moment of the day, which is Mahomes like, oh, you really think Wentz should be playing? How about I throw like a 70-yard bomb to Xavier Worthy, which hit Xavier Worthy on the 2 touchdowns, 15-1, got that one for us, and completed the Xavier Worthy escalator all the way to the top, 6, 7, and 8 receptions, got us over 200 yards. That was another bet they would have had. Not today, but for the duration of the playoffs. I think he ended up leading in playoff yards, not the guy that I would have picked for that one before the postseason started. So, yeah, really the second half, less analysis and more like my touchdown bad hit, long play to Devontae Smith. Like that's all what it was. It was just like for the degens among us, I literally had 39 bets in my article. So I'm just like constantly being like, okay, all right, well, maybe you could use like a couple more worthy catches. And then I will say this too. We talked a lot about longest rushes. I crushed the Saquon longest rush under. He never got even close to it. I don't think he even hit 10 in this game. Worst sweat of my life. I did not enjoy having those. I had under Saquon longest rush, over on Hurts, over on Mahomes, and then longest rush for both quarterbacks. Bets were great. Mahomes didn't go over. He missed by 3 yards. Everything else hit. Hurts got the longest rush, 10-1. Saquon went under. Hurts went over. It was terrible. I hated it. Every single play, I'm like, oh, 2 more yards. Oh, no. They hand off to Saquon again. Like, every play was terrible. It was like the longest 3 hours. Nobody was more relieved than me to see Pickett come in, because I was like, if they put Pickett in and still are handing off to Saquon now, like I cannot take any more Saquon handoffs. So hopefully, if you tailed on that, hopefully you did tail because we were profitable, but hopefully you enjoyed the sweat a little more than I did. I was not enjoying myself on that one.
The two underrated storylines, though, so on that Mahomes throw to Worthy, he overtakes Hurts in passing yards on the throw. He also, his passing yard total was between 253 and 255. He ends on 257 on the Worthy throw. So goes over that. And also, depending on the line you got, KC ends up 22-16 winning the second half as well on that touchdown. So a lot ends up flipping there on that play. And to me, I mean, I'll only go back to one thing here, and then I think we can kind of, wrap up with some of our stats and keep going here. But to me, the pressure without the blitz and some of the numbers that are coming out from Next Gen Stats is absolutely ridiculous. So the Eagles not blitzing once across 42 dropbacks, just the fourth defense to not blitz in a game in the Next Gen era. Okay. So, I mean, then you go further and say, okay, well, they still got 16 pressures, sacked him 6 times without any blitz, basically playing all but 2 dropbacks, specifically cover 4, third highest rate by a defense since 2018. I mean, it was a really, really good job by Fangio. And there was a bunch of stats in Stuckey's article about the fact that in the red zone, guys, forget the red zone. They didn't get to, midfield till half. Like, the red zone didn't even become a part of this game. That's how good the planning was. And the last one is Fangio's defense held Mahomes' second worst performance by EPA in a game in his career. And that's really where it was. A great stat also, ESPN Stats and Info. So I think only 5 quarterbacks in Super Bowl history have been sacked 6 times or more. Mahomes is only the second to get those 6 sacks versus 4 or fewer pass rushers. I mean, this was an absolute clinic. And it honestly showed in every time you were watching any of the possessions. I mean, he was on his butt constantly. And everyone on all these pods for us talked about the fact that these 2 players between Caliendo and Tooney just were out of position. And it was a mess.
Yeah, 6 sacks is the most ever for Patrick Mahomes. Look, I got to be fair here. If we watched this game, Super Bowl or otherwise, and this was Lamar Jackson or this was Josh Allen or whoever else, we would be murdering them for how bad that they played. Patrick Mahomes was awful in this game. I know he ends up with 3 touchdowns and 257 yards. Like, I know that the positive stats kind of come there. Now, Mahomes was terrible. The 2 interceptions were both awful, awful throws. You can't put the ball up for grabs that deep in your own territory. The 6 sacks, look, we say it all the time. Sacks are a quarterback stat. The offensive line was not good in this game. No doubt about it. But I don't feel like Mahomes handled the pressure at all in this game. Or even the very first possession of the game, they're pinned back deep after they got the stop on the Eagles. And Mahomes on 3rd and long, like, scrambles left, wheels around under pressure, and like runs all the way back almost into the end zone and like throws it, trying to kind of throw it away, and almost got picked right there already on like the 30-yard line. It turned out that should have been a sign. Like, that is effectively what he was doing, trying to avoid pressure in this game. It just didn't work. It was not going well. He did not handle the pressure. He had the strip sack also. So 3 turnovers. That's another one of those that I'd call out Lamar for. So calling out Patrick for. I had the EPA stat as well. Second worst of his career. And the only reason it was second worst, it was 0.01 worst last year against Denver. The only reason is because of that huge play to Xavier Worthy at the end. Otherwise, it's way worse than that, because that's a ginormous EPA play too. Interestingly, second worst EPA per play, third worst was against the Eagles last year, week 11, when he played them. Perhaps we should have given that a little more credit. Fourth worst was the other Super Bowl loss against the Buccaneers. Very similar sort of feel to today, where he just didn't get past any of the pressure. Just pressure all game. Did not get much help. Obviously, Xavier Worthy made plays, but Chiefs finished with only 49 plays. They just never had the ball here. 275 yards, and I think over 100 of that was those just 2 long Worthy bombs. So outside of those 2 just like effectively Hail Marys, The Chiefs are 150 to 175 yards. Just terrible. And again, to be fair, not just Chiefs terrible, Eagles awesome. Eagles defense awesome. Should be the real takeaway. Like it goes both ways. But yeah, Mahomes just absolutely not good enough in this. Jalen Hurts MVP. Jalen Hurts to lose the game for the Eagles was my cap. So even though I hit a bunch of my nice long shots, my main pick, I didn't get it on this one. Jalen Hurts wins MVP. I did get the Jalen Hurts MVP because I kind of bet against myself on that one. I don't know that Jalen Hurts was incredible. He just didn't have to be. He did what he needed to as a passer. Got the long one to Devontae that really, really ended it. They got the 4th down stop and then the kill shot the very next play, 34-0. I was like, okay, even Mahomes can't come back from 34-0, which is, we're all thinking it, which is a show of how much respect we have for Mahomes when it's like mid-third quarter, 34-0. We're like, okay, it's got to be over now, right? I mean, that's 34, 5 touchdowns. Like that's insane. But Smith had that one. First touchdown ever by a non-quarterback Alabama player in the Super Bowl, which is pretty crazy. And AJ Brown made some big plays. Nobody really had overwhelming stats on the Eagles because they didn't have to. I had the stat. Here's the starting position for the Eagles. They had 1, 2, 3, 4 times they started with the ball in Chiefs territory, not counting the pick 6, obviously, which you'd like start as the 0. Even without counting that, the Eagles started with the ball on average at the 44-yard line. That, to me, again, the Chiefs defense gave up a couple long ones. They gave up some passes down the field. I thought the Chiefs defense just ran out of gas, basically. Like, it would have been nice to make a couple more plays or go on the attack maybe. Spags did not get to go on the attack much. They held the Eagles to, I believe, 3 of 12 on 3rd down, 0 of 1 on 4th down. They're just on the field all game because, like, we've kind of seen that in recent years. Like, think back to, like, the Jets a year ago, where they had not the one that just finished, not those Jets. Let's never think of those Jets again. But a year ago, this really, really good defense, but the offense was so abysmal that the defense just wasn't quite good enough because they're just on the field all game. And I feel like that's kind of a little bit what happened here, where the Chiefs shut down the run almost completely, other than a couple hurt sneaks and scrambles, and otherwise gave up a couple passes, but just on the field and playing on their heels all game long. And, we thought maybe we'd have the three-peat story here. We've still now never had one in NFL history. We've not had one in any major American sport, men's or women's, since 2000, since the early 2000 Lakers. Michael Jordan, the Bulls did it twice. It is tough to three-peat. We haven't had it for a while. So, yeah, I kind of ran through a bunch of bullets all over the place on that one. What else do you have on this game?
I think it's just probably a good time to give Hurts some flowers. The stat I saw, which was great, is he has 10 passing touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns in the postseason. So 50, I looked it up because I was curious. 53 players have 10 plus passing touchdowns in their playoff career. 9 players have 10 plus rushing touchdowns. He's the only one with both. So, his versatility, I think, is very key. And it was actually part of the reason you and I both agreed we liked him for MVP, is we thought the odds were a little bit long for a guy who runs very predictable plays, which he got a rushing touchdown. And it was very much a part of why he won the MVP. I think the pass to Devonta helped. I think there was things that probably went with it. But the fact that we knew he was probably going to get 0.75 touchdowns, or something of that nature in this game when you look at projections and things like that. So I think that's worth talking about. The other stat that's just plain out fun is longest odds to win Super Bowl MVP for a quarterback last 20 years. Plus 375, Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl 59. Plus 460, Nick Foles, Super Bowl 52. So both situations coming with Philly in that spot. And then the better one is Foles and Hurts, both those Eagles teams, is the reason we haven't seen a three-peat since the Packers in the 60s. So Foles basically cuts off the Patriots three-peat in the middle, and we just saw what Hurts did. So both performances very different. Eagles scoring 40 points in this game, and in that Foles game, they scored a bunch of points as well. I think the other thing, which is something we had talked about earlier this week and on other podcasts, is the experience of Hurts being in the game Sirianni being in the game, going through the 2 weeks. I mean, at no point did I feel like Philly felt uncomfortable in this one. Barkley doesn't have a good day at all. 25 carries, though. So they stick to the run. And even I thought this was one of the best parts of the game is the pass to Devonta, because it basically says to you that, yeah, we're up a million, but we're still going to attack.
Yeah.
And to me, that was the perfect representation of kind of the Eagles. The other one I'll give you two more stats, which just kind of continued in this one. I tweeted this out. This one makes no sense, guys, but it's just it's insane that it's actually true, which is the team with the better win percentage entering the Super Bowl is now 1-17 against the spread since 2003. I'll say that again, 1-17 against the spread, and the one winner, Patriots over Falcons. So it really should be 0-18.
Yeah.
It's just
wild.
I mean, inflation of some level, obviously a butt ton of noise, but a crazy stat nonetheless.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll toss it back to you.
I saw the stat. I saw that before the game, and it was one stat that I was like, really? It's like when a stat like it still is a small sample on like under 2 decades of just one game a year, obviously.
Yeah.
But like when a stat has a 0 or a 1 on one of the numbers, it's always gonna catch your attention. At least to make you think twice about it. It's like, okay, well, what is this? It like the natural logical conclusion I could draw of, okay, is the stat anything? Is one conference tougher and getting you more ready for the big game, and one conference was easier and not getting you as ready as much and getting us overinflated on how good we thought a team was. And look, I wrote an article in like week 10 or 12 or something, burying the Chiefs, being like, the Chiefs are done, no Chiefs future, that's not going to happen, they're going to get blown out one of these games. I bet the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl in this game. Like we got like I totally went away from that. This is the game that like back in week 10 or so that felt like was coming for the Chiefs, and now all of a sudden they kind of hit the gas late and they got things moving. But back to the stat a little bit, they got things moving against Pittsburgh and then against Houston and then against Houston again. And maybe it turns out those teams weren't all that great either. They just also were in the AFC, also playing a lot of the bad teams. And maybe that's kind of what that stat is representing. Certainly it's one that I filed away in my head, although I saw it floating around there a lot. So now it's like, it's one of those that now we all know we're going to remember it for next year, and then it's going to finally flip the other way for once. But definitely an interesting one.
And the other one that's great is, I mean, at this point, the underdogs covered 5 straight Super Bowls.
Wow.
And I looked it up before we went on here. That's the longest stretch in history. Obviously, that includes the Bengals, who lost the Super Bowl but ended up covering, which is not something we had seen in almost forever at that point. But 5 straight covers for underdogs. Underdogs have been really good in Super Bowls, too. I think it's like 12-5 or something like that, last 17 ATS. So really, really a good stretch. When you get into this game, it almost feels like the 2 weeks kind of evens it out a little bit. But listen, we had seen 2 Super Bowls of the better team, I think most people would say on paper, losing to the better quarterback. And today, it just felt like we saw that Tampa Chiefs Super Bowl over again. I mean, the pressure in his face changed the game completely. And I don't really have too much else here. I mean, I think we really kind of sum up the game by just saying that it never really felt like KC had a chance. When they fell behind, they just didn't put up the points. And it almost, at the end of the game, it almost felt like at times maybe they had started to find different ways to attack it, but the pressure just felt like too much. And it's crazy. I mean, no blitzes, just insane.
Yeah, I mean, really, 40-22. Like, for our bets' sake, I'm happy that the Chiefs got some of those late scores, got our Xavier Worthy bets and everything. From a historical standpoint, kind of just would have rather had the shutout. It felt like they shut them out still. Like that, to me, this historically, when we look back on this 10 years, 20 years from now, I think this was the defensive masterclass against Patrick Mahomes. And I think it's going to be the standard. And I think it will end up being in an all-time great career for a guy that still may go down as the greatest of all time, that's gotten more things to do to get there, but certainly off to the right start. This is the game that people are going to point to. Like when Vic Fangio goes into the Hall of Fame, this is going to be the game that goes in there. Like this is one for this is what we remember. It cannot be the one we remember for Mahomes choking or the three-peat falling. It can't always all be about the Chiefs. This was Eagles. This was Eagles defense. I was laughing about your stat that we're now in 5 straight underdogs covering. I believe, if I'm right, I'm going to fall on my own sword here for you. I believe this is my 4th Super Bowl I've covered with the Action Network. Now, look, I made a lot of money for us today. We hit some long shots. We got the Eagles defensive touchdown. We got the Hurts longest rush. We got the Worthy 2 touchdowns, all 10-1 or longer. My main bet was the Chiefs. I am now 0-4 in the Super Bowl on my main side pick in the Super Bowl. And I'm laughing because apparently that means that I'm captain favorites. And every year I must be taking the favorite in the Super Bowl. And every year the underdog keeps covering. Although I'm pretty sure 2 times in previous Mahomes Super Bowls, I talked myself into the better team. The better team will win in the trenches. The better team will win out. They can't just pick Mahomes. And I finally brought myself to the other side. And look, it does, for the football nerds like us out here, it kind of feels right. It kind of feels nice to be like, okay, you don't just have to have Mahomes and magically win everything. You can actually go get Zach Bond and Milton Williams. These are dudes that were just available to everybody last year. You can go build this team and actually win a Super Bowl. You don't have to just have the god of football do it for you. There are other ways to accomplish it. And, it gives you some hope that way. And I feel like the Eagles, not the Chiefs, have to be the storyline. Duh, because they won the Super Bowl. But Chiefs is everything at all times. Mahomes is everything at all times. And, in a way, even though I'm not exactly the fondest of Philadelphia fans, I will admit, it's so nice. It's rare, especially in today's age. It used to be in the 90s. Every Super Bowl was like this. Every Super Bowl was a 20, 30-point game. I hated Super Bowls growing up. It was no fun. Nowadays, everything is down to the wire. And you don't even get to enjoy it. To get to just victory lap the entire second half of the Super Bowl, Sirianni just jumping up and down on the sideline. That was one of the earliest Gatorade baths I've seen. We get the yellow Gatorade towel with almost 3 minutes left in the game. We get the whole image of normally, we had an Action Network a couple of years ago. We couldn't even see what color the Gatorade was. We had to publish a story and we broke news to the internet of what color it was because it snuck onto the screen after it went to commercial after the game was done. This is just during the play happening. That's how much the Eagles dominated this game. And they don't just deserve flowers. They deserve a bouquet, a rose garden. They got the whole thing. They did the thing.
I think the 2 notes in post-game that we'll talk about throughout the offseason is the fact that Hurts gets the ring before Allen and Lamar, which I think will be a continued conversation. And Burrow, keep going and going and going. I mean, Hurts is added to a very small list of quarterbacks who is currently active and with a ring, because that was pretty much Mahomes and the old guys. But now Hurts gets added to that list. So I think that's number 1. That'll just be a topic. Number 2, I think it's the wins and losses for Mahomes in Super Bowl. So he beats the 49ers by 11. Then he wins by 3-3. And then his losses are by a combined 40 points. So I do think that will be a unfortunate topic. And I don't want to call it a stain on his legacy, because if the guy goes out there and is 8-2, I think we're going to probably forget about those 2. But I think losing by a lot in those 2 games is something to consider. Now, the offensive line was the issue in both games, and everyone's going to talk about the fact that Brady went to 10 Super Bowls and led in the fourth quarter of all 10 Super Bowls. So there's obviously a difference there. But to me, those are the 2 topics. Hurts gets the ring, the tush push, the way the Eagles kind of attacked the season and played worked. And I think there's a topic there. I also think the Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley kind of working in areas is going to be a topic. What type of additions people can make to put teams over the top, because it worked here. Barkley doesn't have the best game, but they're not in the game without him.
Yeah, I agree. Even from that perspective, it had become the Saquon Barkley story this whole postseason. And, Barkley finished 3rd in MVP voting on Thursday night when the awards came through. It had become about, okay, This is the same team as 2 years ago. They just had Saquon Barkley. That's the only exciting part of the Super Bowl, Saquon Barkley. Otherwise, it's all the same. No, not the same defense. That was the key here. We brought in entirely new names on the defense, how we rebuilt the whole thing. And yeah, this was a team win. This is the thing you want to see when you watch sports. I know it's really fun sometimes. Like, look, we all liked Mahomes starting out. I personally still like him, but a lot of folks were rooting against the Chiefs today. A lot of those same folks were really rooting for the Chiefs when this thing started out. It's fun to like the new guy, the guy chucking it all over the field, making amazing plays. It just kind of gets old after a while. We like something new. But I think in sports too, we like the one player doing everything, but it's really refreshing and nice to see the team too. Like, everybody loves to do youth sports and go out and like support their local high school team. You preach team sport. You preach everyone does their thing. You don't preach Saquon Barkley, go run for 300 yards and do everything. Like that's fun. We love to bet on it. We love to bet the long shots. But like to me, this game, this is football. This is sports. This is what you want team sports to represent. Is you want enough of times you want the better team to beat the better individual. And today the better individual wasn't good enough anyways. He was pretty terrible.
Well, the better individuals 2-1 in games against, really, really, really good teams. So kind of is what it is. All right. Well, to me, that's Super Bowl 59. Are you ready? So we're going to give you a Super Bowl 60, 2026 hot read. We're going to have a quick discussion now because we have odds out to win the Super Bowl for next year. There is also MVP odds out, which I think Brandon has a small opinion on. And I mean, I've looked at the market. I'll give you a quick thought there. But Brandon, hot read, Super Bowl 60, kind of get us started, and then I'll give you my opinion.
Yeah, we got to get one pick before we get out of here, right? So last year at this time, wrapping up the season, made a hot read. No, I'll be fair. I made two hot reads. One of them was the Jets, never to be mentioned again. It did not go well. The other one was the Philadelphia Eagles, 22-1 from last year at this time. Obviously, cash for us today. I think next year's Eagles are the San Francisco 49ers. That is my first futures bet, 17-1. You can play that at Bet Rivers. It was 20-1 a few days ago when the first article went up. I've got another full article. Just tweeted that out as we're recording this live after the Super Bowl. So you can check out the whole case there. But it's kind of two parts. Number one, this sounds crazy, but I think Kyle Shanahan is the NFC version of Patrick Mahomes. Kyle Shanahan has been in the NFC Championship 4 out of 8 seasons with the 49ers and led Matt Ryan and the Falcons offense to the NFC Championship the season before. So 5 out of the last 9 years, Shanahan's offense has been in the NFC Championship. This year, 6-11, no good. For the last 5 years before that, they won at least 12 games a season. They went 62-33, counting the playoffs. For the 5 years, they won multiple playoff games and made the NFC Championship. 2 of the 4 made the Super Bowl. Shanahan's offense just hasn't been stopped yet. And like, oh, well, they stopped them this year. No, they really didn't. They just were hurt all year. McCaffrey, obviously, that's been the big guy for them. And he just didn't play this year, more or less. He played 4 games. He had the long IR stretch to start the year. Brandon Ayuk holds out, doesn't get the contract early, comes back, and then misses 10 games, 20 ACL. Trent Williams, the stud left tackle, in my opinion, still the best lineman in the game, misses 7 games. Brock Purdy, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, they all missed multiple games. That's it. That's the offense. That's your 6 dudes that you built your entire team around. That's 36 missed games. So average of 6 games per those 6 best players. You're not going to have a great season when that happens. But even then, they were 4th in yardage. They were 7th in yards per carry. They were 4th in yards per pass attempt. Even with all those injuries, that's Shanahan's offense. That's how good they are. They finished 9th in DVOA with all those injuries. 9th doesn't seem great. 9th was ahead of the Eagles. 9th was ahead of the Rams and the Vikings. 9th was basically tied with the Chiefs. They were still that good, playing with like a bunch of backups. Jordan Mason comes in, 5.2 yards a carry. Isaac Garendo, ever heard of him before this year? I sure hadn't. 5 yards a pop. Jawan Jennings, almost 1,000 yards, is putting up like 3 touchdown games out of the blue. And look, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. He becomes the MVP of their team now. That's why they went 6-11. You shouldn't be the MVP. You need the other guys to be MVP. But he had a pretty good year too. So that offense is going to be just fine. They trade Debo, don't really care. Just fine. They have a ton of weapons, more than anybody. They'll be back. They'll be good. The other reason I like them, and the reason I think that they're like these Eagles, so the Eagles last year, what were they? They start 10-1. They sputter down the stretch. We kind of wrote them all off this time of the year, like, Eagles, are they going to fire Sirianni? Is it time for a change? Has this thing run its course? But 10-1 still mattered, and they were coming off a Super Bowl loss. So fast forward, 49ers coming off a Super Bowl loss, not exactly 10-1. They had all the injuries. And then what's one of the big changes? The Eagles go out and bring in Vic Fangio, the old head coach that didn't work out, bring him back to run the defense. Same name we knew from before. Look what happened. Robert Saleh. Give the man his flowers. Bring them back to run the defense. Not great as a head coach, but man, the guy can coach some defense. And look, we just saw tonight, Vic Fangio and Steve Spagnuolo are failed head coaches who returned to be a huge part of championship teams as the defensive coordinator. The defense for the Niners missed 3 games from Nick Bosa last year, 5 from Travarius Ward. Hufanga missed 10. Dre Greenlaw basically missed the whole season. Not quite as bad as the offense, but they're going to get a lot healthier too. Before this season, they ranked defensively top 5 in DVOA 3 straight seasons. They were better than the offense 2 of those seasons. You kind of forget how good the defense was too. And then they lost Robert Saleh, and then they lost D'Amico Ryans. Well, Robert Saleh is back. I think this Niners team is as good as any team in the NFC, as good as the Eagles, even the one that just won the championship, as good as the Lions. I think better than them given the losses that team's going to hit. So if you look at kind of where things stand, the Niners end up going 6-11. They were 2-6 in one-score games. Even just flipping those games, just that for the season, they go 10-7. They win the division. They make the playoffs, and maybe they're this team still talking about today. I think they're next year's Eagles. I think they should be priced even with the Eagles and with the Lakers, who are both around like +7, +800. We're getting double the value here. They are 6th in the odds. They're not totally forgotten, but I know it's sexy to look down the board, and I'll give you another name in a second here. You like to pick the long shot, but really the long shot in most cases, you're going to like get to a conference championship game and have to hedge out of it. The Niners can win this thing. The Niners can actually be the team we're talking about next year right now, just like we are with the Eagles. So San Francisco, 17-1, the first Super Bowl pick of the year. That is the 2026 hot read.
I mean, anything I would have said that would have even tried to question the pick, I think you probably answered. I was going to bring up the Debo angle of it. I mean, obviously, you have faith in Purdy, or you wouldn't be making this bet. I mean, Shanahan, we know, has been in multitude of different big games, so he can win it, he can lose it, but he can get there. So I'm not, I mean, Arizona, the Rams, like, I don't necessarily know I have, like, Seahawks, like I don't know if I worry about any of those teams really, especially with not knowing kind of a lot what's going to go on with McVay. The rest of the division is kind of so I completely get it. Do you want to give out your other one, or do you want me to go through a few names myself?
Yeah, I'll give a couple other ones. You can do your names. We'll wrap this thing up. So that's the hot read. The rest of these are more nibbles that I may put out there, the long shots to get close. So I think we might be ready maybe after Saquon, 3rd place this year, McCaffrey, 3rd place last year. Could we be ripe to finally get that running back MVP? If I'm right about the Niners, Christian McCaffrey, 150-1. I saw that name and I was like, man, I know I'm going to be the not running backs guy, but we've had now 2 years in a row where running back went right up into the mix of things. And McCaffrey was basically Saquon before he was hurt all year. So I think if the Niners really are that good, that number is too long. The other thing is, in the division, I do like another team. I think Seattle's going to be really good next year. So maybe that's the reason I'm not like San Fran as much. To me, I wrote the article about the Niners being the next year's Eagles. I think the Seahawks could be next year's Vikings. That awesome defense that dominates all the way. Team that's like maybe a 500 team going into the year. Like I think their win total will be probably like 8.5, something like that. And instead, this incredible defense, Mike McDonald's unit really came around second half of the season. The problem was they couldn't block anyone to save their lives, and Geno really fell apart late. But okay, let's take the analogy further. What the Vikings have this year, a failed washout Jets quarterback that had a really great career year with some good play calling. Okay, well, Geno Smith is a washout Jets quarterback, and now the Seahawks bring in Clint Kubiak. Clint Kubiak, the guy to lead the offense that was leading the Saints offense to start the year when they put up like 45 a couple games in a row to start out. And on like week 3, we were all naming him head coach of any team he wanted after that. So I think Seattle could be pretty good next year. They got a lot of weapons. They go find some blocking, hopefully. Seattle 70-1 to win the Super Bowl. Now, I think this is probably a hedge sort of option, but I think if they are the Vikings, could Seattle be like 14-3 and be the 1 seed, win a game, and now you're hosting the NFC Championship? I think that is in play. So for me, 70-1 for that possible angle. And then the crazy one, too, you already chuckled at it when I mentioned it before the show. Geno Smith, 150-1 MVP. When I'm looking at MVP right now, I'm just like scrolling down the list. Where are the quarterbacks past 50-1? Who's going to lead a team, and can your team win enough for this to be a ridiculous price? To me, that's Geno. So 2 Seahawks bets, 2 Niners bets, and the last one, I don't know if I've even seen Offensive Player of the Year odds. I got my eye on Nico Collins. I love to bet receivers for that award. I don't know if Diggs will be back. Tank Dell, I don't know if he'll ever be back. I'm not sure what's happening with the injury. Really sad. But Nico was a monster this year when healthy, and then just picked up a lot of injuries. I think him and Stroud could have a huge season next year. He's a guy that I could see maybe opening like 35-40-1 and bet down to more like 20-25 by the season. So if you get a price, something like that, that's one kind of middle pick that I might look to have a monster year, especially if the Texans have a big year. So Niners, main hot read, Niners and Seahawks angles. Those are 2 teams I'm feeling really good about going to next year. Give me some of the teams you're thinking about or players for next season.
I mean, just in terms of the teams, these are the teams that kind of just stood out when I was going up and down the list. So Green Bay at 18-1, I think, is a little bit too short, even though I think they're probably the best among like the top teams. The favorites right now are KC and Philly. Then it's Baltimore, Buffalo, Detroit, San Francisco, then Green Bay, just for awareness. That's every team 18-1 and shorter. So the other teams with value I think are interesting is Houston. So 27-1, considering the Diggs injury, the Dell injuries. You talked about Nico getting back the roster, which I think they closed under 12-1 or 15-1 this season. You're now getting 27-30-1, which I think is kind of intriguing, especially because that division stinks. And you're probably going to get into the playoffs anyway. 30 feels a little bit long there. What about the Chargers? So, I mean, this might be absolutely crazy, but I mean, is there a world that they, conquer the Chiefs for the AFC West next year? I mean, we really liked what they had. They do have another game of experience. We like Harbaugh. Like, there's a lot to like about them. I wrote down Minnesota. I really don't think that's an option. I think they're a good number right now at like 35-40-1. The other 2 crazy long shots, to me, Atlanta, which is between 50 and 60-1. I mean, that division, again, kind of stinks. And I know we like Carolina at points. Tampa Bay's shown promise. But to me, Atlanta still has a super talented roster. And 50-60-1 is a nice number. Again, getting into the playoffs. And then I have to just say this last one. The Jets at 120-1, with knowing there's no Rodgers and knowing the roster, just feels a little long, considering New England's still a bit of a mess. Miami's probably going to get worse before they get better. And yes, Buffalo is Buffalo, but I don't know. 120-1, getting out the garbage, and if the new stuff is good, feels like a kind of a nice number. So that's the way I looked at Super Bowl futures. Any comments there before I throw you an MVP name or 2?
Yeah, I saw the Jets. They looked a little bit intriguing to me. I had some similar thoughts. I must admit, I saw Aaron Rodgers 100-1. I was like, run it back, but I don't think we need to do that one again. I will say with the Falcons, I think I'm less intrigued by the 60-1. You're probably looking like a Seattle, like, okay, can you get to the NFC Championship and hedge for me? I think I'm more intrigued maybe by Michael Penix MVP. I think I saw that like 90-1. Okay. So I think if you like the Falcons, we kind of seen some of the sophomore winners in the past, and he's barely even a sophomore. He barely even got to play this year, but he made some nice throws. He certainly has the arm for the position. So I could see kind of second year of that offensive system there, getting him the reins. To me, a little more interesting, I think, than I don't believe in the Falcons defense. I think is the problem. So I think I'd almost rather not believe in the defense, and Penix has to do more stuff that way to go put up some MVP numbers. But to me, I think that might be an MVP play, but I'm curious who your other MVP names are.
Okay, so since 2018, these are the players who win MVP. It's Mahomes, Lamar, Rodgers, and now Josh Allen. Those are the only players to win MVP. I think what you're really looking at with why I'm telling you that is running quarterbacks have now won back-to-back. When I say running quarterbacks, it's part of the resume for at the end of the season when you look at their stats and say, holy crap, they had a crazy year. And I think the running part is a part of it. So, if I thought Anthony Richardson could complete more than 4 out of 10 passes, he's an interesting concept at 100 to 1, but obviously not something I want to look at. So I kind of want to focus on, can I grab a guy that I think might move, like Stafford at 50 to 1? Do I feel like he's going to be there or in a better situation that might make that 50 to 1 even more intriguing? Because he's a guy that can sling it, if he's in the right offense. So the other guy I want to look at is some running added to the passing. So it's do I like Kyler Murray at 50 to 1 if I like Arizona? Because he could definitely put together a season that has a bunch of rushing touchdowns that, if they won enough games, his resume could be good enough to win it. So that's one guy I was looking at. I think Jordan Love at 30 to 1 is interesting. If Green Bay is 18 to 1 and they're right in that mix, him at 30 to 1 is intriguing.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was you or someone else that parlayed the Packers and Love to win MVP entering this season. I think that's an intriguing run back. If you like what Green Bay does, there's talks about them getting Devontae, so I think that has legs. Mm-hmm. You also brought up running back. What do you think about Jahmyr Gibbs at 100 to 1? I'm sure you can get it longer at that as at other books as well, but you could not pick a more explosive back. And honestly, Montgomery stole and vultured, and he took a ton of touchdowns away from what Gibbs could be. But Montgomery's getting older. He got hurt this year. Gibbs is obviously the future there. The Lions obviously are going to be very, very, high-powered on offense still. So I think Gibbs is intriguing, given what, he could put up 20-plus touchdowns and, go kind of crazy. So that was the only other thought I had.
Yeah, I would say I like the Gibbs idea. I think it sounds crazy, but I think 100 to 1 is not high enough for me to want a better running back. I think I need even longer than that. Just I really need outlandish numbers because it's just so unlikely to happen. So I really like the Packers angle. Certainly that's a team that if the Packers had been just a little bit further down in the odds, I'm probably talking about them instead of the 49ers. Definitely a team I was very high on the whole back half of the season, very high on Jordan Love. To me, you listed off those MVPs. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. That's who's winning it. And your takeaway is, okay, so I need someone who can run. Who could be like these quarterbacks? My takeaway was, why are we even talking about this? Just one of the top 4 quarterbacks. The end. There's nothing to say. It's one of the favorites there at the top, and that's all that happens to win the MVP.
Or wait, or it's the Rodgers, and I think the Rodgers guy is Burrow, right? If Burrow wins enough games this year, he's probably the MVP. So I think, could Joe Burrow win MVP next year?
Yeah, but
of course
I would contend that Joe Burrow is in that mix of quarterbacks. I would put him as good. I would personally put him still in with Lamar and ahead of Lamar personally. That's a topic for another day. But I think he's in that mix. So I think to me is okay. The questions that I would have on your picks is number one, MVP. Can you actually not just put up the stats, but can you put yourself in position to be in that mix of quarterbacks? Jordan Love, I think, still there's a possibility, but I thought he would this year. He took a step back. CJ Stroud, he could get there maybe. Jaden Daniels. I think we have to respect what Jaden Daniels did to this Eagles defense. Now that we saw what Patrick Mahomes didn't do to this Eagles defense, could he maybe be the guy? I think you need not just a guy to be flashy and fun, but can you actually get into the Lamar, maybe Burrow, Allen, Mahomes conversation? That's what you have to be. So I think I tried the Dak Prescott last year. Dak's never getting into that group. Brock Purdy, never getting into that group. Jared Goff, awesome season, never getting in that group. Sam Darnold, not a chance. Maybe, Geno Smith, the guy that I just mentioned a bit ago, not going to happen. Never going to be in that group of people. Maybe you just have to be the MVP. And I think the other thing too, back to Super Bowl picks, I have a really hard time looking for a sleeper in the AFC because in all likelihood, you're going to have to beat two at least of Mahomes, Allen, and Lamar in the playoffs. And the only reason I can't hate too much on your picks is because at least you have Stroud or Herbert on them. That maybe the reason they won those games is because they joined into that group. I think if you're looking in the AFC and you don't have a guy that you think can get there, like maybe you're high in the Dolphins. No, you're not high in the Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa is not beating multiple of those quarterbacks in the playoffs. It's not happening. You know it and I know it. It's maybe Stroud, maybe Herbert. Like, ask that question before you keep going. And otherwise, that ticket is dead on arrival. The NFC is where we still don't know. Maybe Jordan Love and Jane Daniels, maybe we're going to get a tier of NFC quarterbacks. But I think that to me is why I was high on the Eagles this year. That's why the 49ers, that's why the Packers look good. The Falcons, sure, why not? It's wide open. Could Michael Penix be a top 3 NFC quarterback next year? I don't think so, but he could. It's possible. He can't be in the AFC. Can't be like top 5. It's not happening. So at the end of the day, we just talked through an entire Super Bowl of it wasn't just the quarterback, it was the whole team. But when it comes down to tickets you want and MVPs you want, sorry, still the quarterback.
No, you're right. But I do think part of the bet now is a little bit of movement, right? Like if you can try to predict, I mean, there's going to be a bunch of movement. And I brought up Stafford because I think, the Rams could have a whole new situation next season. I just think there's an opportunity there. I mean, I think there's like a trading aspect when you're this far out because, you're giving the books a little bit of money. All right, well, Super Bowl 59. You got anything else? Are we good to go?
I mean, I just want to say thanks. Thanks to you for been a lot of fun on all these pods all year. Thanks to David Payne, our producer. We got a lot of late nights on these. I know he's got to do the work afterward. Thanks to Matt Mitchell producing. Thanks to Brendan Glasheen, who was on a lot of these episodes with us this season. And honestly, just this, thanks for watching, listening. Like, our job is to watch football and then come on at the end of a long day of watching football and talk about football. Like, there are a lot of folks who would love to make some bets and watch some football and then talk about it. So we appreciate all the listeners, all the followers, all the comments in the YouTube, all the likes, all the et cetera. We love it. We appreciate all listening, and it's been a fun season.
You are the best. And honestly, we had a good Super Bowl today, so a profitable end to the season. And I just want to say again, thank you to everyone for sticking with us all year on these recap episodes, as well as Brandon's Best Bets episodes, the 6-pack with Stuckey and Raybon. So let me just close out here saying, if you're not sure what to do now that the NFL is on hiatus, the Action Network podcast will continue to have UFC betting previews each Friday. We'll also have more sports betting coverage during the NFL offseason, so keep close on those notifications so you can get alerts when we drop new episodes. If you're looking for basketball betting conversation, we've got our daily NBA betting podcast Buckets. I imagine Brandon will be on that podcast soon to talk all things NBA. Then, guys, March Madness around the corner. So for college hoops, don't miss out on the Big Bets on Campus podcast with Stuckey, the rest of the BBOC crew leading up to March Madness. My thanks to Brandon Anderson, all of our podcast producers on the back end. We will catch you next time here on the Action Network podcast. And it's been a great season. See everybody next year on our road to Super Bowl 60. See you later, guys.